It's funny how things are changing in the play, in the movie, on the screen of the unchanging. Just a moment ago, so it seems I remember being a young adult, working in an office, helping everyone of the old folks with computer problems. And now I can't even get the microphone going. And if we would seek happiness, peace in these changing phenomena, potentially I could feel very bad about myself or be very miserable now how I screwed it up. That's why in these meetings, before we attend the world, so to speak, before we attend to the mind, to the body, which we all do, we don't neglect them at all. We are great friends of the body, mind, and the world, the BMWs. But before we attend with our awareness to those, we bring back ourselves, awareness, back to its unchanging, ever unchanging source. There are many names for this source, ground of being. Buddha, nature. Mostly we use here simply awareness or loving awareness or consciousness. The Tao, the heart. Or upon further investigation, which is part of our meetings, simply I, or I am. The silent, unchanging background or substratum that is the foundation, the rock that our life is built on, that which is always here, which we can always trust, despite of the content of our experience, the ever-changing content of our experience. Like a moment ago, an expert of computers, and a moment later, somehow useless with computers. And to get in touch, so to speak, with this unchanging background, with the I am, with our being. There is nothing that we have to do. It's quite the opposite. Everything that we try to do, everything that we try so hard to be that, or to become that, or to improve that, metaphorically speaking, takes us a step away from it, the striving, the wanting, the needing, the seeking no effort to become that will get us closer to it, because we are it already, here and now, listening to these words right now, as Francis Lucille would say. So instead of striving, trying to do something, rather relax and open up to our experience just as it is right now. Knowing deep down in our hearts knowing directly without anyone needing to tell us that we are that. Silent, unchanging background that is aware here and now of all of my experience, independent from my experience. before we possibly ask, who am I? Inspired by Ramana Maharshi, a great saint from India, Tiruvannamalai. We may simply ask ourselves, am I? Or am I conscious? Am I aware? And without any effort, without any trying, without any striving, instantly, directly, we get in touch with this aware, present background. And no matter what is happening in our body, in our world, which might be very challenging at times, and we are very open to address that here. But at any moment in the changing phenomena, we can find rest in this unchanging, aware presence within our own hearts, so to speak. It's like our being is just sitting there in the background, smiling mischievously like a little kid at our unfolding dramas. Without being in touch with this silent background, without, we could say, being knowingly this awareness, this consciousness, without being aware of being aware, which doesn't require confirmation of thought or feeling or perception. without being in touch with this unchanging reality. We cannot be really in touch with anything in the world. We cannot touch anything in the world. We cannot touch anyone. Because only this awareness, this consciousness is aware of the body, of the mind, of the world, of all of our experience, of all our loved ones, all our passions and talents and creativity. Without being in touch, knowingly being that what we are, it is only thought that tells a story, a fantasy, its own version of reality. What is happening, what we are seeing, what we are experiencing. It is a distorted version of reality filtered through the conditioned mind. And thought not being rooted and springing from the source only touches more thought. It's like a virtual, talking about computers today, like a virtual reality where then thought interacts with thought, program with program, confirming to each other. To be something, to be someone. And life tends to become a bit blurred or pale or lacking the juice, because it's just thought or just images. They don't represent the beauty, the joy, the love, which is inherent in life. Through that which is real in life, that awareness, that consciousness that gives life to everything, to this world, to this body, and to this mind. Without this ground of being, this consciousness, this body, this mind would not experience anything. So to be touched by this world, by our friends, by the flowers, by the birds, by anything, we need to be in touch, so to speak, with that which gives life to everything, including ourselves. In the Upanishads in Advaita Vedanta, there is a story of a son sent by his father to study. And he goes for 12 years, he studies all the scriptures and he learns it all by heart, and he's such a good student, and he learns everything, how everything works, a real great pandit. And he comes back to his father and tells him widely what he all learned, and the father's like, oh yeah, wonderful, great. I'm so happy for you. But have you learned also do you know the one who knows all of that? Or who is the one that knows all of that? And the son was puzzled, of course, what to say. So the real training began, so to speak. Without knowing that which is knowing anything, we cannot know anything. In the best case, we know a good copy, a good virtual reality of what is really happening. But it's always filtered through the conditioned mind. And that which is knowing anything, of course, is that which is aware. Awaring, knowing, experiencing, witnessing are one. It is this aware, knowing, experiencing, witnessing screen, the substratum of the movie, including all of our avatars playing in it. So as the Father was showing the Son, even though this unchanging background is always there, if we are not aware of it, if we don't know it knowingly, we may spend most of our lives in a copy, in a virtual reality. Wondering maybe why it's all such a crazy show out there, getting crazier and crazier apparently from week to week. Everything is God, but without God, everything is nothing. Everything is reality, but without knowing reality, it can appear empty, shallow, or even cruel. Everything is consciousness. That's the common teaching of all non-dual traditions, no matter what we call it. But without consciousness, without being knowingly in touch with that, without knowingly knowing that as myself, everything is nothing, can be nothing. So in a way, We just need to get that one thing right to solve the puzzle of this seemingly very complicated dream, play, drama. We could study forever all the details, the 10,000 things, as it said in the Tao Te Ching. But if we don't get that one thing that we already have, we miss out. The inherent inner treasure, the gem, the beauty of everything in our experience, including very much our own avatar bodies and minds that were given to us, that are inherently carrying this treasure in every cell, so to speak, with the potential to be as enjoyable as the source from which they sprang. It's a bit like watching a movie or playing a computer game, or maybe wearing one of these new virtual reality masks. I never did, but I can imagine it must be fascinating. It's very much exactly what our minds are doing, presenting to us a virtual copy of reality according to our programming, our conditioning, and our human faculties. There's nothing wrong with wearing a mask, and I would like to try that one day. And when I was a kid, I was playing sometimes, racing or Olympics. I liked sports on computer games. Or watching a somewhat dramatic movie, maybe. That's all so much fun as long we're remembering that we are watching, that we are playing, that we are wearing a virtual reality glasses. So when we remember who is the one who is playing, who is watching, who is hearing, who is experiencing, who is awareing, when we are in touch with that silent background, that fragrance of reality, we can enjoy the play, the drama, the game of life. And then from there, so to speak, and this is the somewhat seemingly complicated thing in satsang, in non-dual teachings. It can seem complicated because the truth is revealing itself in layers, so to speak. We have to kind of come to this full closure of oneness, often in steps, because the mishmash of this consciousness, this reality, the mishmashed with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our perceptions, with the world, it's been mishmashed so thoroughly that it's hard to find in all of it that which is real, that which is conscious. So as a concession to this apparent separate person that I thought I am, even though later in deeper understanding, even that dissolves. But as a concession to the mind that can only grasp duality, meeting it where it is, so to speak, we show it clearly that there is a subject and that there are objects of experience. The subject being this silent, aware background, experiencing, awareing, witnessing all those objects in the world and in me, my thoughts, my feelings, sensations in the body. There are many beautiful spiritual traditions and teachings available. Coming from different angles, coming from that background or coming from the foreground. losing myself in objective experience or withdrawing from objective experience into the background. They all have their place. But in my experience, and that's why I'm emphasizing it a lot, especially now as we restart the meetings, we have to get that one thing which is not a thing, really firm, really right, really being rooted in that, to make sure that we don't mishmash again, not lose ourselves again in the movie, in the play. Why not, we could say. It can be fun to mishmash ourselves. It's fun as long as it lasts, I would say, until an unpleasant experience, an unwanted experience or person comes along, then the fun very quickly stops usually. And we may find ourselves back in suffering, mishmashed with our experience, squeezed like mashed potatoes. Oh. So what we're doing in a way, it's like a little child when it gets a new toy, or then it has this tendency often to try everything with it, and then it eventually starts very often to take it apart in all its parts. And the parents may freak. It's like, ah! And they take it apart and check and until they have discovered all of it. And then they're somehow satisfied, and then it's done. And then we can maybe even put it back together with help of the parents, and then we can play with it. But this tendency is there to kind of get through all of it, see through all of it. This is satsang. To inquire into all of it, to see the hooks that are maybe still hidden here and there that can trick us into believing to be a separate entity. And when we're really deeply, firmly rooted, at least that's my experience. That's somehow why it's being shared like that, in those apparent layers that all then dissolve again in the end. We want to be really clear for a start that I am that which is aware of all the objects in my experience. And that which is aware is never an object, can never be an object, always remains the subject of my experience, so to speak, for a start. Even the subject and object relationship later collapses. But first I need to be clear that that which is subjective in my experience is this background, is the I am, is the awareness. To make sure that no matter how much we mishmash later, how much we squeeze those mashed potatoes that I like so much, for example, and we will, no matter how mishmashed it all becomes, we will remember, we will know firmly the essence of the mishmash, the truth of it, the reality of it, the truth, the reality of the world, of ourselves, of our bodies, of our minds. And only being rooted in that and really deeply knowing that, we can not only touch the rest of the world deeply and ourselves, but we can also then inform the parts, the apparent parts of the world, of the body, of the mind, of the truth, which we call sometimes the embodiment of the truth. It's a very big movement of embodiment in the spiritual world, but often we're embodying before we're knowing what we're embodying. We're kind of embodying the body. Embodiment, how we use it here, of the truth, of consciousness, of awareness, is not adding something to the body, it's not adding something to the mind, making it more or making it more whole or filling it up. When I use the word embodiment, it's more a releasing, an emptying of the body and the mind of that which is believing or feeling to be a separate part. And only that which is full, which is whole, which is complete, awareness, consciousness, can inform the parts about its wholeness and not the other way around. That which is whole and complete can shine and inform the parts in this understanding, in this knowing, in this light of consciousness about its true nature, about its reality. And that's embodying. The body drops the illusion, the mind drops the ignorance of being a separate part, separated from that consciousness, from other beings. So when we speak about embodiment, in my understanding, at least, we have to be very careful that we make sure that we first know what is real, know which is unchanging, before we attend to that which is changing, to that which is apparently apart. So always when we get into embodiment in this satsang, we make first sure that we are in touch with that pure consciousness. So we don't feed the mind and the body and the world, meaning also our friends around us, with more ignorance, with more parts, with more partial knowledge. Speaking about Ramana Maharshi, missing Arunachala sometimes a little bit in my heart. Some, you've been just there. Happy for you. The whole teaching that we know, which is really in one book, is based on this substratum, on this who am I? Because if we get that right, so to speak, we get right that which knows, which is aware, it informs, it transmutes, it has the power to dissolve all the ignorance in the mind and also all the separate feelings in the body if applied and understood. The teaching might sound very different, of course, than what is coming out of my mouth when we speak about embodiment and these things. But in the end, it's the same. How could Ramana be so transparent, floating around like having no body, shining in its glory, being so beautiful? Because in his body there was nothing left, believing to be a body. And what was the result? The most beautiful body. When we just look at the picture, we're like, oh, struck by this apparent old man. So here, the emphasis is clear, the first step, so to speak, to really become fully clear about that which is aware, which is conscious, which is I am, is crucial for not only discovering this peace in the non-dual space, so to speak, but for a happy, creative, successful, joyful human life, according to one's own predisposition that was given to us for that avatar, the talents, the personalities, the looks, they will all be different. Even though we all share this one awareness, we all share this one being, even resting together in that and having realized that doesn't make us all look the same, behave the same, be interested in the same. That will and is meant to differ and to be a variety, explosion of variety of manifestation of creation of this one consciousness. I call this being knowingly resting in myself, being aware of being aware. I often call that resting in being, or in our meetings, resting in our shared being. The fragrance, the perfume is enhanced in our meetings, hopefully. So reality can inform our bodies, our minds, and eventually our friends, our world. And at that step in the non-dual understanding and the very tangible experience, possibly, of that substratum, of that background as peace, we could say, oh, but there is still duality. There's someone resting in being, isn't it? Before I, the body mind, the separate person, was experiencing apparent joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain. And now I, awareness, am aware of the body, the mind, and the world. There is still apparently two. There is this presence, this shanti, this peace, and there is still a sense, possibly, at that stage of me resting in it. And there is nothing wrong with that. This was Ramana's teaching in a way, Ramana's path, if we understood and discovered and got in touch clearly with this. Who am I? With myself? Then he suggested just to abide as the self, which is classical Advaita Vedanta, Nididhyasana, the last stage after listening to the teachings and then contemplating and reflecting over them for years and years and years, maybe eventually to just abide as the self, resting in being. Or the Christian mystics call that contemplation, infused contemplation. The body-mind gets infused with this presence, with this quality, with this fragrance, with this flavor of being. And just resting in that fragrance, abiding in the self as the self, is a path to completion, so to speak, because the light of consciousness takes care of those apparent parts in the body and the mind. in the world over time. And if we spice it up, so to speak, the resting in being, with understanding, with the teachings, with the investigation, with dismantling the doubts that might still appear and have the power to convince us to be a separate being. If we question all of that and find the answers, possibly through the help of a so-called teacher, through satsang, spiced up, so to speak, with teaching, with understanding, the resting in being in no time may shift into resting as being. These are words trying to describe the undescribable, of course. Just a pointer. But this sense of a localized me may be still feeling kind of localized here in the heart, or for me it was more here, somehow localized, connected to the body. Goes, and the witnessing consciousness that for many stays for quite a long time, often witnessing my experience, which was useful and important before, to get in touch with this witness, this first stage, so to speak. With time, paradoxically, abiding as a self, resting in being, participating in satsang, deepening in understanding, embodying the understanding, and maybe even unnoticed by the mind. Which is the best and most gentle way, so to speak. One day we notice that this witnessing consciousness, this witnessing awareness, that which is aware of our experience, has dissolved in this understanding, in this love. And being nothing, being no thing, but awareness, in this love, in this understanding. reveals itself to ourselves, being everything. And all is truly one. Everything is God. Everything is consciousness. There is no more but. It's all truly one. The screen and the movie are one. Consciousness and humanness are one. Consciousness, body, mind, world are one. So even in the final understanding, and we spoke about it and we'll speak about it over and over again because it's a very crucial understanding. Even the presence, the fragrance, is just reflected consciousness, projected consciousness, and not actually that which is aware, and so to speak, not quite the real deal. It's a very valid path, pathless path, just to rest in that fragrance, in that presence, in that light of consciousness. It takes care of the ignorance of the separation. And with the help of understanding and teachings often, it's sped up. So the subject-object relationship also can go. But along the way, what could be more beautiful? And that's why we don't dismiss it here. What could be more beautiful than to look in the mirror of consciousness and see reflected in it our true face. Formless. That's what we're doing when we rest in presence, in the reflection, in the projection of consciousness. We dismantle the old belief and feeling that we have been conditioned with in the game. We've been looking most of our lives in a physical mirror, seeing this image and getting convinced that this is me, this here, this is who I am, and this body is what feels, and this eyes is what sees, and all of that has been trained all of our lives. So we took this evolution from being a baby and just absorbing, experiencing, pure experiencing life. We took that game on and conditioned ourselves, believed ourselves. So this is you, Adrian. And we look in that mirror and believe it more and more and more and more. So resting in being, abiding as the self, enjoying the peace and the fragrance of pure consciousness is looking in the mirror at our true formless face, our formless body of pure being, of pure love, we could say. And as we needed to kind of get convinced for a while that this is me and I like my nose and I don't like my ears and I like this and I don't like that, and I got so accustomed and all of that about my body. It may take a while to look in the true mirror of our formless self. There is still this subject-object relationship, but in due time, in intelligence of consciousness, we get so rooted, so convinced in being that what we truly are, that we don't even need to look anymore in that mirror, in that formless reflection. Meaning, we don't need verification anymore through the fragrance, through the presence, through satsang, through a teacher, through a book, through thought. We know so deeply that we throw all the mirrors out and just enjoy life in our self-luminous, radiant splendor. And no matter how many come around and tell us that we're ugly or stupid or ignorant or whatever, we know that we are only good. Shreya, called in Sanskrit. And we know not only that we are only good, we also know that you, apparently you, are only good. So you can throw at me ugliness, ignorance, whatever. I love you anyways. We may think or say. And we can check in with ourselves, so to speak, whether this subject-object collapse, that true non-duality, is our continuous experience, so to speak. One way to check it is to observe our minds if there is still doubt about that fact. If there is still someone questioning whether I got it or don't, whether this is the real deal, whether this is the real stillness. It's very normal and common. Give me some verification. Give me that certificate now that I got it. Until the mind has dissolved in this understanding, in this love, it's totally normal and very welcomed here in our meetings to question that. But eventually, and that sounds like time, which it isn't, this timeless presence is, we are not only so rooted in it, it has informed all of our being. It is true embodied non-dual understanding that nothing and no one, not our own mind, not other people, and not any circumstances in life have any more the power to take us out of that knowing, of that jnana, of that understanding of who or what we are. And we stop checking the mirror and just plunge into life and make the most of it in our peculiar, particular, unique form. And we have to be honest with ourselves if we want to go all the way, so to speak. Whether there is still a voice in my head that has doubts here and there, that is questioning here and there, and then it's very important to address those. In the same way, like believing that I'm not, my body is not going to do much if I still feel localized in my own experience in this body. And I refer myself to others from the perspective of my body. I just fool myself to be not my body. And that is fine and doesn't matter also, but the natural consequence will be that suffering will still have a place in our life. And happiness might be still coming and going. peace might be still coming and going. And some of us, probably most of us here in the satsang, are not satisfied with that, because this is the promise of it's almost the same promise of the previous ignorance. Sometimes I'm happy and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm content and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm happy in my body, sometimes I'm not. So, as a reminder, also, Rick, you are new here. We don't stop at being awareness, so to speak. We do not, it doesn't match our understanding that awareness is one thing and the humanness, the body mind, is another thing, so to speak. We understand and experience that happiness and peace, lasting happiness and peace, is not something achieved beyond the human experience, but that it can be experienced here and now, in this world, in this dream, like experience of the world, in this body, in this avatar that was given to us, independent of its age, looks, conditioning, etc. This body, this mind, this world, in the end, is consciousness. Is reality. There is no room in true non-duality for two different things. Not even consciousness and its reflection. The substance of consciousness, of the world, of the body, of the mind, is only one.